Hey, good morning. It is Saturday morning, and we are here for a coffee talk. We're going to talk about World of Tanks. Yeah, it's a day early, but I will post this on Sunday. I've got a guest coming into town, so I won't be able to be in here recording while he's trying to sleep out on the couch. Here's to you guys. That was almost like a toast. No, there's no Kahlua in there or anything. I only wish. It's a nice Italian roast this morning from Sam's Club. Still a K-cup. I did buy one of the little adapter things so I can do my own coffee, so we'll try that later on. Hey, check out my T34 with its 3 marks. That was one of the benefits of the rental week we had, or weeks I guess it was, the last few weeks. Makes the 3 marking much easier when a bunch of new players grab rentals and drive down the requirements for an MO. We actually got 4 of my tier 8s marked because of that. One of them just took actually one was a tier 7. I think I mentioned this last week. One of them took 1 game and I'd made it. This one I had to chase a little bit. I went to about 94.5 a couple times and then had to go down a few while I had bad 0 damage games. Speaking of 0 damage games, I've had more of those in the last couple weeks than I have probably had in the last year. I'm going to talk about that at the end. So what do we have on the docket today? Take a look at my handy list here. We're going to talk about the spaghetti progress as far as the missions go and the rest of the missions that we have as usual. Quick dive into the sales, what you can buy out there. Interesting test changes in regards to frontline. We're going to discuss that. Some interesting things afoot with frontline mode. Polish tanks. Polish tanks are next after the Italians. We'll get the Italians in this next update, and then sometime in the near future, Polish tanks. There's a little bit of information out on what they're going to be like. A lot of made-up tanks right there. So we're kind of into this nebulous trying to find different kinds of tanks that aren't clones of all the other Western or Eastern tanks like the Russian tanks that we've been dealing with so far, because so many militaries in the 50s just basically gravitated towards buying Western tanks or buying Russian tanks, specifically using a lot of Russian tanks for the Soviet bloc types of countries. And then, hey, do we have a forum revival going on? Some interesting things afoot in the forum. I'll take a look at that. And then I'm going to give you some early meta thoughts. I have not solidified these yet, but we're going to talk a little bit, and that goes back to my 0 damage game discussion earlier. So let's get started with Coffee Talk. Grab your coffee, have a drink, and let's get going. All right, it is a ×2 crew experience weekend for every battle. That's a pretty good deal for grinding up crews. On the emissions tab, you can see we've got the standard ace tanker thing going on. The 110E5 is on track. Interesting thing about this, if I'd have been thinking about it and I was really going to grind, I would have done it with the 110E5 on track vehicles. You'd be knocking out 2 massive grinds and getting all of the prizes for both. That would have been the best way to do this. I wish I'd have thought about it to begin with and let you guys know that right up front, that would have been a great way. A lot of times when they have these big grind missions to get a tank, they don't have on tracks, and I think it's for that very reason. But this time, whether it escaped them or they just didn't care. But man, if you had a 110E5, the 103, the T32, down to the tier 6 American heavy tank, which are all great tanks, this would have been a great way to do it. Going down to the other missions, which just clapped for some reason. You can see that we also have some basic weekend stuff going on, making every day, and it's the small things like the kits and whatnot. You can get some bigger kits down here if you do this thing 3 times. That's basically that. So let's move on real quickly over to the spaghetti event. The Italian Challenge going on till the 27th, so we're coming up to the end, only 6 more days. This one's an odd one because it starts and ends at 2, which I think that's actually a local time. As I recall, this didn't start until the afternoon of the day it said it started. So you might get some grinding in, if I'm right anyway, on the morning of Friday if you have the day off or you're up early. So that's a little bit different. We've got the 10 stages. You can see on stage 6. This one is 35,000. Remember, it's got the secondary requirement over here, or possibility, not requirement, that you can do, and that's all at tier 10. The nice thing about these is they've got some really good gifts along the way, prizes. This one especially, these ×10 50% credits. Those are fantastic. Going to get on the next one, probably a camo. I suspect I'll get maybe to here, maybe. And then I'm going to have to make a decision where I'm going to spend some money on this tank. We will talk about that in a moment as to whether I think that's worth it or not. And for the sales, there are some gold packages on sale for a decent discount over on the vehicles. There's two in particular. Number one, well, obviously the spaghetti, the Progetto, is on sale. Remember from last week, depending on how many of the stages you get through, that's a percentage discount per stage, up to 90%. Of course, you don't need well, it's a 100% discount. You get the tank for free if you get all 10 stages done. So that's still ongoing. One thing to remember about on that is all the little extra goodies will come with that whole package. But let's say I went through 6 stages and I got those goodies as I went. If I then buy the package, I don't double dip on those first 6 stage goodies, but I do get the ones for whatever stages are not completed. If you click on the tank and you've done any of the stages, it will be readily apparent which ones you get with it. You've already accomplished the ones below, so you don't get the double dip. Some people thought that might be possible. You can see I've got a 51% discount right now. The other one is the 3045, and then the Scorpion is also on sale. Both of these are good premium tanks. I recommend both of them if you're still buying premiums or giving money to Wargaming, which we'll talk about in a minute. This one happens to be in the tech tree, so you should get a gold discount on getting the 3045. So if you have any of that extra gold or free gold, you can now get it discounted. That's how it should work. I can't see that on my tech tree because I already own it. Let me know down below. Let your bros know down below whether that's true or not. That's a pretty good deal. Buying premium tanks at a discount on the tech tree for gold is a good way to do it, especially if you've got free gold or you've won gold along the way. That's pretty much it for the sales. So I found this little tidbit very, very interesting. This is on the webpage for World of Tanks, and it's talking about shaping Frontline, the game mode returns. In this first paragraph, first wave of common test, everyone got a chance of the new incarnation of Frontline. This is something they've been working on for a while, by the way. It's been on super test, I believe, at least once. For the second common test, we've decided to alter our approach based on the assumption Frontline may become more exciting as a time-limited in-game event with respective mechanics. Interesting. So what happened to ranked battles? Is that gone? Interesting. This is tier 8, I believe, on the test. I haven't played it. Now they're talking about making this an limited in-game event, time-limited in-game event, meaning I'm assuming they would try to do it over and over again. Man, Wargaming has really, really struggled with this whole new mode thing. It seems like every few months somebody has the good idea fairy show up at Wargaming and come up with some kind of idea for a new mode. So what's going to happen then with this, at least for this test iteration, is you're going to have up to 30 ranks, and you get fame points, and you move through the ranks, and you get prizes as you go, get goodies as you go. Once you get to the end rank, you get a bigger prize, whatever it may be. Then you have a prestige mode, which means you can reset and start over. Does that sound like a lot of video games out there? Where you move through and you kill the bad boss and then you're allowed to restart on a harder mode, potentially. No word here on whether you're playing against better players or if everybody's in the pool or if this is some kind of idea for a ranked iteration. But that's all possible. And some of the mechanics in this thing with the respawn and the magic healing points and now this prestige mode and these 30 levels of rank. Does this sound like maybe to you one of these kind of standard FPSs out there? These massive multiplayer FPSs, Call of Duty, you know, all the rest of those. I can't even come up with the names. My son plays all these things. It does to me for sure. And it's indicative to me of the design philosophy that they have, of the design team that they're using up there. There's a lot of this kind of thing creeping in and around the corners. And they may very well think that that's the way ahead, but for me, it leaves me flat. I don't care. This kind of thing is not even close to why I play this game. The reason I'm still here on this game, and this is going to get a little bit into what I'm going to talk about later, but I'll just say this part of it. The reason that I am into this game and I continue to play it is that the original core mechanic of a hardcore 15v15 tank game where you drive around blasting each other is still solid for me. A type of game where mistakes matter, where you don't recoup hit point losses. You know, early mistakes are a problem and you need to be good enough to avoid those. That core gameplay, I think, is why the vast majority of people stuck around in this game. Now, for them to open their aperture and try to bring in more gamers that may be interested in these other things, that may be what they're trying to do right there. Personally, for me, it does nothing for me. We'll talk about that a little bit while, in a little while, a little bit while. In a little bit while, we're going to talk about that. I probably need some more coffee. All right, let's move on. So like I mentioned earlier, the Polish tanks are on their way. Sometime after we get the Italians in the next update. Right now we've got a Tier 6 Premium, the Pudel, captured German Tier 6 medium tank. When the Poles start getting close, they're going to go ahead and release a Tier 8 Premium, much like they did with the Italians with the Progetto. So the first, they said in here that the first Polish tank will be the Premium, but of course they've already released the Pudel, so that's out there. But we understand what they're trying to say. The first 4 or so tanks are going to be basically pre-war models. The Poles did have some pre-war tanks, a couple actually fairly good ones. They just didn't have a whole lot of them. Then Tier 6 to 7 experimental medium tank models, whatever that means. Who knows where they got that information. Mid to high tiers will be influenced by German and Soviet tanks. And at least one of these, I believe, is a prototype, or a drawing anyway, not necessarily a prototype. Actually from Poland, from what I can understand. But what I found interesting was Tier 8 Premium Heavy Tank. Let's see, where did it go? I'll find it in a minute. Here it is. Tiers 8, 9, and 10 will be composed of heavy paper tanks, more precisely diploma projects. What does that mean? Diploma projects? Is that like the ultimate kid drawing tanks in class? You actually can do that maybe in an engineering class at college or university where you draw up a heavy tank and do the whole engineering design of it. I don't know what that means. Anyway, these are probably going to be made up tanks. What I find interesting is a heavy paper tank. Is it made of heavy paper? No, obviously what they're getting at is it's not going to have much armor. And I'm thinking, all right, a heavy tank with not much armor. Interesting on this meta. Knowing their design ideas, what's the big heavy paper tank that you can think of that they put out that was pretty much made up? It wasn't really a heavy tank, it was a TD, the WTF 100, the giant autoloader. I'm a little bit concerned by that wargaming. I'm not really sure where you're going with that one. So we're going to see what happens there. That's just early information. These tanks up at the top, the 4TP and others, the Vickers Mark E and some other things, those are actual tanks that were out and about. Pre-war and early war kind of thing. So anyway, the Poles are coming, so that's good news. Well, hey, we may have a bit of a forum revival going on here. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But maybe they're trying. You'll see that we've got some pinned subjects up here, some threads started by Wargaming employees. First one is talking about Glacier, so I guess he's going to do a weekly or some kind of scheduled, I guess, talk about maps. Too bad he picked Glacier as the first one, probably one of the worst maps in the entire game right now. Then they're talking about the 4202, talking about the on-track 110 E5 breakdown, and then pick of the week, which I believe is just a subject that they found interesting. So that's all. That's good. That's all a little bit of engagement. Maybe try to reform the forum just a little bit. Some of the usual trolls jumped in there and started yappity-yapping and whatever. But, you know, one person's troll is another person's freedom fighter. Depends on what side of the argument you're on. Hopefully people take that at face value and don't turn it into a big crap show in there. So good on them. The interesting thing for me is some of the things they're in there talking about and saying this is going to be a bit of an elitist comment, but some of it shows a kind of middle of the road understanding of the game. And yes, the vast majority of players aren't at the level that I play on. There's plenty of players that play at a level higher than I do, but let's face it, I'm better than the vast majority of players out there. So some of the things they say I disagree with, but I don't think that's a reason to go on there with the flamethrower and try to burn down their thread just because I don't agree 100% with what they're saying. So good on him, man. You know, one of them, I don't remember which one it is, but he's a big TD player, so he's talking a lot about TDs. That, to me, that drives me kind of nutty. But hey, you know what? People like playing TDs. That's their thing in the game, so good on him. The point of all that mess is that I'm glad to see Wargaming giving a little bit of an effort at some give and take on the forums. And I think talking about gameplay stuff is probably one of the best ways to do it. Just baseline, let's leave all the BS out of it and just talk about, hey, here's a map, here's a tank, here's a premium that is available out there, and here's some things to think about, keeping at that level. Maybe we can get this forum a little bit more revitalized so it's not just the big whine fest and font of bad information that it usually is. So I found that interesting. Check it out. Take a look at those threads right there. There might be some good things in there, and I'm looking forward to what they may come up with in the future on that one. For the final section, then, I'm going to give some thoughts on what I think the new meta is, and some of my personal thoughts about the game after 1.0 / the new meta, or what I see happening to the game. And I wouldn't say it's a huge meta change, but there is something that's a bit concerning to me based on some of the things that happen in 1.0 and the way the game is going. But first, before we get into that, this is a comment or a instant message, sorry, from Bonzi Duck, who is on the channel quite a bit and drops me videos and things, and said hello and said, hey, how's the event going for you? And talking to him here real quick kind of solidified in my mind some of the things I've been thinking about. So we'll start with that. Says hello, says how's the event going? I said I'm only on number 6, on stage 6 for the Progetto. Normally in the past I'd be all over these events and hard charging, trying to do this and be very interested in getting a new premium tank for free. And I'm struggling to find a care. I want the tank. I'd like to have it. I may eventually buy it. I don't know. We'll get into that in just a minute. But the point of that is I'm not automatically excited. Also, you'll notice up here I'm only down to 10 days of premium, which also plays into it because I have some gold, and my intention was to buy 180 days of premium with the gold. But I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I'm thinking about it. So we'll get into that as we go. He says he has to go out of town. He's not going to get it. And he asks, all right, do you think the tank is worth buying, the Progetto? And my answer was, the tank's worth buying, but the company isn't worth supporting. And the game is only slightly more worth supporting than the company. So what do I mean by that? It's a good tank. And if you got the money and like the game, there's no reason not to get it. It's got an interesting game mechanic. It's probably, in my opinion, without having played it, at the top edge of overpowered, or at the bottom edge of overpowered, I guess, if you want to call it that way, for good players, based on what you can do with it, because you can play it as a normal medium, and it doesn't suffer very much as a normal medium, minus having no armor. And you have that clip capability. I've run into several where it was hard to fight them, because they're able to plink away at me with my medium, but if they get me down to 700 hit points, they can come out and erase me, and I can't stop them from doing that, depending on the situation. So that's Progetto. So I think it's actually worth buying if you're interested in the game and you like the game and you want a premium tank and you want to get some Italian crews going. For me, the company is absolutely not worth supporting based on the things that they're doing and the design philosophy they currently have and the direction they're going. Reach back to what we just talked about with frontline mode. I don't want a Battlefield 1942 tank game. Right? I don't want respawns. I don't want health kits that bring back HP or health points or whatever it is. I don't want multiple ranks and all chevrons and all that garbage. I just want to get in, drive this tank around, watch the stats move up and down as they do, and play the game. That's what I want to do. So from a company standpoint, I'm not sure I want to give them any more money. But no, I'm definitely sure in Wargaming's case, I don't want to give them any more money. Even though I might, because the game is still good. The core game, the 15v15, for me, pub battles, for other people, it's clan wars or something like that, is still just that much above the line to where I'm willing to spend a little bit. I did at Christmas, but I haven't touched it since. I may buy the Progetto, and I may not. And that's unfortunate, because in the past, for the last 7 years or so, I would have easily got that tank, no problem. I would either ground through it, or if I had a timing issue, which I sort of have these 2 weeks as well, then I might get up to 80 or 90% and just kick out the 10, 20 bucks, whatever it is, and be quite happy with it and move on. So that brings me to the 1.0 thing, which for me, the whole meta the way the game has changed lately, how it has affected my enjoyment, essentially. So what's been happening is, I mentioned zero damage games earlier. I have a lot more zero damage games in the last about 4 weeks than I can ever remember having in a year. And I'm not doing much different, which is probably the problem, because I have a fairly hyper-aggressive style. A lot of the maps where that worked out for me really well are gone. So these, and they were complained about a lot, but Stalingrad, Pilsen, maps where you could get down, get forward, do side scraping, find the enemy, fix them, and start taking them out, that had good little localized meta flanking capabilities and not massive flanking capabilities. I could do very well on those. I could also do pretty well on some of the vision control maps, but where I struggled sometimes, I think, are the more funneled maps that don't have a whole lot of crossfire capability. So if you think of Malinovka or Prakhovka, they're pretty wide open, lots of big crossfire capabilities. But then you've got some of these other maps like Abbey and things like that, where there's not much crossfire capability. You're just basically going down and punchy face kind of thing. So I know I'm being a little bit talking out both sides of my face, because I'm saying Pilsen I liked, but I don't like Abbey. But at least in Pilsen, within the localized brawling areas, there were ways to get around, ways to change angles. On these other maps, there's not really any ways to change angles. It's just getting hammered by artillery, driving into TDs, and playing punchy face with the guys in front of you. So what I have found is, in addition to that, the maps that they did change, they added a bunch of TD cover to. And this one's I'm really struggling with. The prime example, although it's happened on multiple maps, is Erlenberg, which used to be one of these kind of good maps where if you were aggressive, there were places to get up and get in front, get up under the enemy, especially around the castle on both sides, and start lighting guys back in the back and get shots from your campers. Well, that is completely impossible now over on the castle side, especially. Also, over on the other side as well, because the distances are too short, or too long, I guess, to the bushes. And they've created these assassin sniper bush lines on both sides of the map that if you get to the castle, there's no reason to go to the castle. You have to watch it, or else you'll get flanked. But you can't, it's not possible to cross across that open area. And I'm struggling because I like to get up front and try to fight, and that castle's completely useless. You just get massacred by TDs sitting in the back. And that's really where I'm coming down to. The other one is Fjords has done something similar with that top area where you've got the bush lines on both sides where snipers just sit in there. What's happened is it's becoming, in my view, a very campy meta. Very campy meta. Without a lot of really good opportunity to be able to move up forward, push into them, and light these guys. It's just so dangerous to get up forward. So this has led me to multiple zero damage games, trying to do some of the things I used to do. So, two choices, right? Walk and say, ah, screw it, I'm not doing this game anymore, or try to change your philosophy or the way you fight, adjust to the meta. So that's kind of where I am on that, actually. I see that with the maps that's removed, which were all pretty good brawling maps, with the changes that were made to some of the maps that weren't quite as campy, making them more campy, and then leaving what were already a lot of the camping TD already favorable maps in, what you've got now is a huge shift, in my view, to a very campy and irritating meta, where sitting back in bushes, being very passive, using your team as meat shields is the order of the day, which is not really a game I want to play. I enjoyed it when there were a couple maps that did that, and then we had some good brawling maps. We had a nice mixture. I think we didn't have quite enough vision control maps. Now, there's a difference between a campy map and a vision control map, and that's what a lot of players don't understand. Some of these maps, it's not possible to get vision control because of the way it's designed. It's simply just a campy map, and you don't have any good approaches with scouts or places to go with scouts, so it's not really a vision control. It's a campy alleyway. I mean, it's impressive when you can actually create a campy alleyway, and that's what they have done with their changes. Those are the maps they left in the game, and they removed the pure brawling maps. Some of those may come back, but for now, it's a really disturbing and irritating campy trend. All right, guys, that is it for Coffee Talk for this week. Nice short one. All my pontificating on it. Maybe I'm wrong. In the next 2 months, we'll find out. But those are my initial thoughts on what's going on. I'm going to tell you right now, straight up, I am considering whether I'm sticking around with this game, to be quite honest. The way it's going is not a direction I really want to support anymore. And I'm only here out of past loyalty and inertia, I guess, at this point. And I suppose ultimately I'm giving them a chance and see where it goes, but I don't really have any hope. I didn't even get into all the chicanery from the company. That's all well documented on my Coffee Talks. Everyone knows how I feel about that. But interestingly, I will just go on one more sidebar here. When a player gets to this point in your game where they're worried about the gameplay, all of that stuff that your company did that's stacked up behind them that they remember as being just bad, now that becomes that's the nut cutter, right? That's the thing now that is starting to sway them. They're thinking, well, I'm not really enjoying the gameplay. I don't like the direction the game's going. And oh, by the way, I have a long list of grievances with their chicanery and the BS that they've done in the past. And that is why your customer service matters right there. I forgot to mention earlier, as long as we're going on multiple sidebars, the Intel trophy thing got delayed. I'll keep an eye on that, but it got delayed another week. That is going to be interesting. All right, that's it for Coffee Talk. We'll see you guys.